Hi everyone and welcome to your daily horoscope and tarot reading. Today we have a very active and powerful sky where most of the power is due to the conjunction of the Sun and Mercury, and both of them are also extremely close to Uranus in the sign of Taurus. So this energy can be quite revelatory, it can be quite shocking, it can be quite chaotic, especially from a mental perspective, because this is the kind of energy where epiphanies, sudden realizations, unexpected communication, maybe truth, opinions, suggestions, any type of down to earth, palpable guidance can reach us all throughout today and the next couple of days, even beyond next week. Yes, Mercury and the Sun are going to distance themselves from each other. Both of them are still going to be dancing quite close to one another, and they're going to form very powerful celestial conversations with other planets around the end of the week and, of course, next week. So, this energy just gives the basic tone, but since today is the moment when both of these planets are so close to each other, this is going to be a day full of information, of revelation, of realizations, the truth, and very practical and useful information reaching us from all possible sources. Now, this information has much to do where Taurus falls in your own personal chart, but generally speaking, it has much to do with our worth, value, finances, material situation, all of our future plans, dreams, goals, which have to do with our financial and material lives, where in the present moment, most of us, one way or another, are trying to find stability, especially mental stability, where we need to have a couple of very rational, very palpable reasons to feel safe, to be hopeful, to be confident of the future. Now, of course, under the present circumstances with the coronavirus situation, and most importantly, the disastrous effect it had on the world economy, are scaring and worrying us, are somewhat unsettling all of us one way or another. All of this big global turmoil and whatever is coming into our lives from external reality did take away our, future security, especially mentally, because in the present moment we're not in famine and we're not, you know, suffering the worst of the worst, but still our minds know that this is a possibility and the chances are quite heightened for it to play out in the future. So this is like a celestial invitation for all of us, regardless if it's just individually or our local community or our country or human collective. As a species, are trying our very best, especially mentally with that very powerful Mercury and Uranus, to find solutions, to ground our thoughts and our plans, the logic and rationality of our minds into something solid, something concrete, a well established plan, or any kind of information like a future plan, a vision, a promise, or future help from authorities, for example. So, all of us are trying to find something to ground ourselves in, to ground our logic, our rationality, so that our mind won't worry as much about the present moment, about the tomorrow, so to speak, about next week, next month, what we're gonna do financially. And not worrying means that there's so much energy there that we can use in the most practical ways to come up with ideas, solutions, so that our financial lives, our activities, what we do in the present moment can serve our highest good, so that this big standstill doesn't affect our creativity, our work, so to speak, everything that we are doing in order to make our lives, ourselves, our activities, our work as valuable as possible. So, this is like a change, the big change of the value systems, which is the main karmic theme of 2020. But this is where we're doing it very mentally, very practically, very cerebrally, so to speak, because that is what the Mercury and Uranus and the Sun dancing together tightly basically represents. This is when we have to make plans for the future, but at the same time work with what we've got, and even most importantly, not panic, not fear, not concern, not make our turn our mental spheres, our thoughts into our enemies. We need to be disciplined, we need to be calm, we need to, allow the light of our rationality, the light of our logic to be our guiding force, to give us the sense of security, even when the future is so very uncertain. So, this is absolutely a celestial invitation, a celestial empowerment, an infusion of guidance, an infusion of hope and faith, especially that Neptune is already starting its sextile, a harmonious conversation, which is going to hold with both of these planets later on in the week. But this is the very, very first expression of this energy, which is really faint, which isn't that powerful, but ultimately this is where it is guiding us to, so that we can use faith, hope, optimism, our spiritual guidance in a very practical manner to soothe and silence our mind and not allow it to overwhelm us with fear, with insecurities. And of course, those fears and insecurities aren't illusions, because they have much to do with the actual future, which is also uncertain. So it is very logical for us to fear in the present moment, but fear is our greatest enemy, so we have to put an end to it. We have to stop it. We must allow that fear to be just a faint thought, to be just one possibility, and not to turn into something heavily emotional, because that is already paranoia, that is already our greatest enemy, that is already making sure that all our fears are going to enter reality in the future. So this energy is uncomfortable. It doesn't matter how useful or how practical or how muchly needed all the information and the guidance and the plans and everything that we're going to be receiving all throughout this week is going to be in our lives, because it still comes as a surprise. It still has an element of psychological discomfort to it, because we have no choice. This isn't something we're doing that much out of choice, but rather out of necessity. But this is where the light of the sun, our creative energy, our ego, so to speak, the most positive expression of our ego, can help us, because trusting ourselves, trusting our skills, trusting everything that once made us valuable and is still making us, so basically our mastery over ourselves, the sun in Taurus, we have to trust that our value is never going to fade away, and we're always, and because of the value that we represent, because of the value that our being is in the lives of others or society or maybe the divine or whatever, we're not gonna be abandoned. The universe, or maybe our higher selves, or maybe just destiny, or maybe fortuna or whatever, is going to have our backs. So regardless of how insecure, regardless of how uncertain the future looks in the present moment, for us personally, because of that inner sun that we have, we're gonna be more than okay, one way or another. And this uncertainty can be just seen as the surprise of the universe, and not as much as being condemned to, failure, poverty, or whatever could result of the energy in the future. In other words, simply put, this is where we take everything that we have in our lives in the present moment, both good and bad, as what it is. We accept the gift, and after we accepted this gift, even if it's full of hardships, even if it's full of like maybe the most painful inner truth that we have done everything wrong in the past, accepting it and working with it means that it's ours. And when something is ours, we can change it, we can dispose of it, we can do whatever we want with it. So this is the kind of energy where we have to accept our karma with great pride and joy, even if it's bad and painful, because accepting it, the simple gesture of accepting it, is already giving us over the power to do what we want with it. That is when we can transform it. That is when we can purify it. That is when we can eliminate it. It even gives us the chance, if we so much wish, to just abandon everything and start a new life. But none of this can take place until we accept it, until we own it, until we become the rulers of our own value systems, the Sun and Mercury and Uranus in Taurus, and go navigate towards the future, standing from this place of self-empowerment. Now, at the same time, we also have that very dreaded ongoing square between Neptune and Venus. And now this is a highly uncomfortable energy, and you have probably heard me or any other astrologer talk about this, because this means a heavy emotional confusion, especially when it comes to matters of love or matters of the heart, any kind of love. May it be romantic love, may it be respect, may it be just having to live with someone, may it have to do with your circle of friends or society or general, an activity, a hobby, a passion of your... It doesn't matter, it is still very confusing. We might have moments when we're totally unsure of ourselves. We may have moments when our minds come up with all of the reasons why we should abandon everything that we're doing or everyone we're supporting or loving in the present moment. Because that is the, the shadow expression of Gemini. When there is a reason, there's also a counter reason. So everything is rather dual. That's why Venus is not very comfortable in the sign of Gemini when it comes to decision making process, and when it comes to, commitment. When it comes to light-hearted matters, when it comes to fun and games and the joy of living, it is very good there. But when it comes to her true symbolism, when it comes to her highest qualities, well, she is not always able to bring them forward, because she has to analyze everything with a very dual lens, both extremes of the spectrum. And Neptune, the planet of spirituality and illusion and the source energy, makes it that much more difficult, because Neptune is in the dual sign of Pisces, which is basically a watery Gemini, which can be even worse when it comes to emotions, because Pisces doesn't always think or feel practically. It always tries to feel, judging by what the source would like, and when we involve the source, the divine, the universe, so to speak, well, then the universe always possesses the truth, but not the earthly truth, not the subjective truth, not the biased truth, but the infinite, like objective infinite truth, which is totally outside of human sphere. So that's when Pisces energy is very bad for decisions, because the universe basically loves everything. The universe supports everything, good and bad. For the universe, bad and, let's say, just even evil has a role in the world, and it has to be fed and supported, because that is the key to evolution. So that's why the square between Neptune and Venus in this present configuration is so difficult, because how do you judge something? How do you remove your bias when your human condition involves that you have to have bias, otherwise you cannot exist in the earthly sphere, you cannot exist in Earth school. One of the big karmic challenges that we human beings have to overcome is to live with our bias and not allow it to turn our lives into hell, to turn our lives into a permanent state of confusion. We cannot eliminate it, even when reaching absolute enlightenment, even when becoming someone like the Buddha. There's also that minimal level of bias there, for the simple reason that we exist in the earthly sphere. When you become a divine being, well, then things of course change, but until you're a human being, It doesn't matter how enlightened you are, you still have to live with your bias. So some decisions are not dual. Some decisions, there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. There is just what is. Some decisions have to be born out of total chaos, the fertility of hazard, the fertility of chance, because no light can actually able to guide you, because there is no right or wrong, there is no good or bad, there is no wise or unwise, because at the end of the day everything can be just a preference, especially when it comes to matters of love and matters of the heart, even attractions. Can we actually control it? Is there such a thing as wrong or right? Or, love doesn't have any rules. Love just is. So that's why the power of the square is gonna play out very differently in the lives of different people. For example, those who are single and looking, well, loneliness can be like their biggest enemies right now, because it just dominates their being so very badly that day and night they just cannot escape from their own torment. They cannot escape from the prison of their own souls, who need some company. But at the same time, Neptune in Pisces is the energy of solitude. So you might be wanting a partner or a companion or someone, maybe even just a friend, but at the same time, another side of your being wants to be alone and undisturbed. So how do you make sense of this? You don't. You just try your very best not to allow this confusion, this dichotomy, to tire you down. For those who are in an established bond, it can be even worse, because you love and also hate. Maybe hate is a way too strong word. You love and not love someone at the same time. Someone makes you love them, but they also irritate you maximally at the same time. So what do? Is there a resolution to this? How do you decide what to do? Well, you don't. This energy just invites us to reflect. It just invites us to allow these very confusing and even deep thoughts and feelings and emotions to be felt and processed, because clarity is definitely coming towards the end of the week and after. And this week we are going to have that very beautiful super full moon in Scorpio, which is definitely going to help us ground ourselves in our own truth, our inner truth, what is true to us. So if you are a little bit wishy-washy, if this big aura of confusion, the Neptunian type of confusion, where sometimes you even think that you're deceiving yourself, that you're living a life of illusion, a life of wishful thinking or self-deception, well, don't allow this to get the better of you, because clarity will come. So keep being faithful to yourself, to your mission, to your life, to the human being that you are. And when you cannot make choices, it's good sometimes to not force yourself. Just trust that clarity and divine guidance is definitely going to enter your life, and everything that you're feeling in the present moment has a certain logic to it, but maybe that logic is not being revealed right now. But at the same time, this very powerful conjunction of the Sun and Mercury and Uranus is actually a good grounding energy, because our minds can be preoccupied by down to earth and material things. So that kind of pushes this Neptunian type of square, which it holds between us, in the background, and not allow it to bother us that much. So in conclusion, to wrap things up, this is definitely a moment when epiphanies, plans, ideas, communication, it doesn't matter from where it comes, can actually help you, can help you change your life, can help you find mental, rational clarity with your material situation and your material future, even things that have to do with self-worth and relations to others, the value that you share with others. So this is a really good energy. So take this opportunity and be open, especially mentally, and not allow that wishy-washy Neptunian energy to confuse you and to take away your chance to find clarity. Now, around this time, if suggestions, hints, ideas, plans, or something that someone randomly shares with you and is like a synchronicity, now be open to all of these, because these can represent powerful moments of divine guidance, but at the same time, not from total strangers, not big offers, because this type of energy bears like a danger, because Neptune square Venus and Gemini can be fraud on the internet, phishing scams. You know, when an offer is too good to be true, well, then chances are it is. So it's not all those miraculous, too good to be true things that you should be open to, but rather hints, suggestions, communications, either from people who are relevant in your life, or things that make actual sense and logic to you, or most importantly, when something comes up from deep within you, from the genius of your mind. Now, all those things you should be open to, but not fake promises, and not, like phishing attempts and fraudulent activities over the internet. So keep an eye out for all those offers and things that are just too good to be true, because this isn't the type of big, lucky, miraculous energy that can all of a sudden make all your dreams come true. No, this is just information. This is just practicality, mental practicality, knowledge, sources of knowledge, info, which you have to work with in the future, and not like a big miracle that is gonna take place in your life. So when an offer is too good to be true, when something is really fishy and suspicious, well, then chances are it actually is. Now, for the tarot reading, the cards today deliver a rather spiritual and psychological message, so it's not this practical. And the reading is opened by the Three of Wands, which represents that your instinct, your instinctual knowledge, so to speak, is greatly empowered, but at the same time, the Knight of Cups reversed, the High Priestess reversed, your intuition isn't, because Neptune is the planet which governs intuition and intuitive perceptions. So chances are, because of that square with Venus, your intuition could play tricks on you, because this is the type of energy where we project onto everything, may it be another person, a situation, an info, whatever, we project our wishful thinking. So we see in everything that enters in our lives in the present moment what we wanna see, what we dream of, what we fantasize about. So right now, our instincts, our deep gut feelings hold the truth, rather than our dreams or an intuitive state, because those are highly influenced by that square with Neptune, Venus Neptune square. This doesn't mean that our intuition is fake or wrong, it just means that it's not as direct as it usually is. And when our intuition is telling us something, when our inner voice is telling us something, well, we need to apply a little bit of rationality right now. We shouldn't just trust it blindly, because we should ask ourselves always the question, if that inner voice, if that dream, or if that intuitive guidance is our wishful thinking, is what we want to see and want to project, or rather if it's actual truth, if it's actually the divine at work there and not just our subconscious. Of course, divine guidance works through our subconscious, our superconscious many times, but we need to know the difference. We need to know the difference when it is actually the divine guiding us strongly, warning us, maybe sending us synchronicities, dreams, visions, whatever, or when it is just, us, just our minds trying to, make things a little bit more interesting. Now, at the same time, we also have a totally different kind of energy, because tomorrow the nodes of the moon are changing signs. So they're leaving Cancer, Capricorn, and entering into Gemini, Sagittarius axis, and we're already feeling this. We are sensing a kind of closure which we don't even know what it is because we can't put our fingers on it. It's not palpable. It might not even have anything, rational or logical to do with our lives, but we still feel as if the wheel of faith, the wheel of samsara, so to speak, is turning, and this gives us like a very excited, full of anticipation, full of, you know, expectations kind of state, because this is how our minds translate to us that a big change is taking place in the world and also in our lives. But this is where we cannot allow this intuitive perceptions to get the better of us, as in to create unhealthy or fake expectations that a big miracle is coming straight away, because it's not. This is just the beginning. This big energy shift is actually taking place, but it's gonna take place over the next 18 months and not instantly. So if you're feeling a big change, a big shift, as if your sense of normality is totally a thing of the past, well, then that is something that has to do with you sensing this big karmic change of themes. So you shouldn't actually rely on instant manifestation of however your life has to change, because there is a lot of work involved here. And perhaps that is why the Three of Wands is so important, because its astrological correspondent is the Sun in Aries. Aries is the head. That implies that we need to rely on our logic, on our mental sphere. We need to rely basically on the brain, on the mind, in order to figure things out. But it isn't gonna help us, freely, because first of all, the biggest and the most important job, so to speak, that we have to complete is to make order in our minds, is to make sure that our thoughts are always on the appropriate frequency, and never to allow any self-defeating thought to disturb us, to take away our concentration. We must really shut down that shadow self whispering into us, because that could just end our stories there and then in an instant. Because of the North Node is in Gemini, where it's exalted. So yes, the mind is greatly empowered, but on the other hand, we have to work with it. We have to purify it. We have to make it to be like a sacred temple, to be like the most pure and clean host for that North Node, the energy of our karmic path. So, the divine, if the North Node is the guidance, the karmic guidance of the divine, well, then our minds have to be a sacred temple for it. Otherwise, we cannot use it. Otherwise, it won't be miraculous. Otherwise, the progress that we have to, work towards is not gonna come easily. So this opens a massive karmic theme over the next 18 months, the Three of Wands, that we need to make our minds to be a valid ally in our lives, where self-defeating thoughts, illusions, and the tricks of the mind, the chitter chatter of the mind must not break our concentration. And this is the most important thing that we have to accomplish, all of us, not just some people. Every single human being has to do this the next 18 months of our lives, because that is the key to the future. Otherwise, if our minds work against us, well, we're always gonna have anxiety, we're always gonna have fears, we are always going to have stress related illnesses where we won't be able to eat maybe anytime soon, because our digestive tract is going to be destroyed by our brains, by the bad way we use our brains, so to speak. So this is a big wake up call that we need to make order in our mental spheres, because that basically our lives depend on it right now. This is it. This is what the energy of the cards and the stars are telling us, that everything is the mind right now, and the mind can only be healthy when it operates from a place of love. I know that love is an emotion, and it might not have much to do with our rationality and intellect, but at the same time it does, because that is the motor. The mind is a tool, but the heart has to use that tool. So if our hearts are full of love, like, I'm not saying here that all of us have to be Mother Teresa, but even self love, morality, like basic equity, dignity, if that guides our hearts, then our hearts have an intellect, a rationality, a logic of their own, and when the mind and heart work together, well, then we are doing the most sacred work possible. That is what sets us apart from animals, isn't it? And many times, even when animals are more loving than us, look at your dog, your companion, your cat, for example. They can be full of love and they can teach us about love. Well, then that just shows our true levels. If we cannot do better than a dog emotionally, if we are not as faithful to whatever we choose to be faithful towards, than a dog or a cat, well, then that speaks volumes about us. And that is why it's so important to align the mind with the heart. And this is exactly why the Two of Cups and the High Priest close this reading, because the Two of Cups is the heart, is the love that we have inside of us, and the High Priest is our own authority, where we have to use it, where we have to control in a very loving and free way our mental sphere and all the potential, all the creative potential that lies there. And once we accomplish this, well, then our intuition and instinct and everything that has to do with certain nonlinear logic is gonna be our greatest ally, our best friend, and is always going to lead us right in the most miraculous ways possible. And this isn't like a fake promise. Every single human being can very easily obtain this, as long as they choose awareness, as long as they choose self-knowledge, profound self-knowledge, even like self-psychoanalysis, to just know how your being ticks, know how it works, know what is truly there and what isn't, what is true and not inside of you. So this self-knowledge is the key towards balance, and that balance is the key towards progress, evolution, and accomplishing everything that you desire. When you're in an empowered state, when your heart and mind work together in perfect harmony, and this doesn't have to be spiritual whatsoever, this is just a state of operating on high frequency, well, then there is no impossible. Then you already entered into a paradigm, into a personal worldview where there is no impossible anymore. And our reality is created by our perception, by our worldview, by our faith. So that means that that is the key to unlocking the true future that we wish to experience. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. Wish everyone a blessed and safe day. Bye for now.